2, check 1, 2. Hey everybody, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and we are live for a Friday night episode of the Conscious Resistance Live, episode number 92. I apologize if I'm starting a little bit late for anybody who may have been waiting around, either on YouTube or on Facebook, but I figured we might as well do the show either way, even if we're starting late. So I appreciate your patience and your time. For the next 30, 45 minutes, however long I decide to rant and rave, I will be with you guys sharing information. We're going to talk tonight about the latest news regarding alleged withdrawal of American troops from Syria. We're going to talk about more news related to the 5G takeover. We're going to talk about more news related to poison from Monsanto. We're going to talk about apparently a potentially leaking or some kind of inadvertent exposing of a potential pedophile ring. All of that, plus I'm going to take your guys' questions and anything else you want to talk about tonight. But first, before we get into that, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up, comment below, let me know anything, if you can hear me okay, if the sound's coming through okay. And if you can hear me fine, just go ahead and comment and let everybody know where you're listening from. And the reason we do this is so that anybody who's tuned in, who is watching this live or watching it later, who sees, hey, this person's listening from Houston, Texas. I'm also in Houston, Texas. Maybe I should contact them. Maybe we can work together. Maybe we can support each other in our efforts to create a better, more free world, right? So that's kind of what I think is a reason to comment below, and just another way for us to connect and to show people who are tuned into this that we have a global audience and that there really are people tuned into these ideas all over the world. And it's really just about us coming together as free, powerful, beautiful people and saying enough is enough. I've had enough of this crazy, screwed up world, and I'm sick of my crazy self, and I'm going to do something different, right? So that's what we're here tonight, to talk about doing something different. I'd like to talk about the news typically because I know that maybe some of you guys out there don't have the energy or the time or maybe even the desire to keep up with what's going on in the world. And typically I'm not talking about what Donald Trump's up to or what the politicians are up to, but issues that I think are still relevant and important, but you're not going to hear these, in the quote-unquote mainstream, in the dead stream, the corporate media, right? So we're talking about issues that are relevant, that affect each and every one of us, but that you're not going to hear about elsewhere. And I enjoy doing that because I think it's important for us. We can't just completely ignore the world around us, right? We can't just act like the people in government don't have power. We can't just act like there aren't corporate powers out there that are also doing harm to this planet. We can put our heads in the sand if we choose, but ultimately we know that those aren't going to lead us to the solutions, right? So I try to take some time, at least 30, 45 minutes a week, to digest some of the news and share it with you guys. But for those who may be interested in keeping up a little bit more regularly, I do have a Telegram channel that is just called Derrick Broze's Daily News, and I post all of the various articles and essays and things that I read and watch throughout the week. And this is on a range of topics: philosophy, politics, health, just different things that catch my mind. And not all of these things I read because I agree with the opinions or the information expressed, but just because I like to read and I like a wide knowledge base. If you're interested in that and you're on Telegram, go ahead and look. I think you can just search Derrick Broze's Daily News, search the channel and find it, and go ahead and try to join, and I'll get you set up for anybody who wants to keep up with that. But also, I am open to talking about other alternative topics because I don't only want to focus on the quote-unquote problems, right? Because the idea is that, we have to be aware of the problems going on in the world. This is the whole kind of basis behind what we call the conscious resistance or holistic activism. We have to be aware of the problems that exist in the world, and it's important. I choose to be aware of the problems in the world, and I think it helps us become more wise and more capable of taking on the world and everything we're dealing with. But at the same time, we don't only want to exclusively focus on the solutions, so that we can actually work towards creating empowerment and creating a better world, right? Because if we're just staring at the problem all day long and just saying, well, shit, everything's going to hell, in a handbasket, and I wish the world was the way it used to be, or I wish this wasn't happening, instead of just acknowledging and coming to grips with the reality and saying, wow, like, these things are pretty screwed up. There are these people trying to pass these laws. There are these institutions trying to damage the planet, trying to limit my freedoms, trying to control my mind, control my spirit, and all of these various forms of propaganda and control that they try to promote. You can take that into consideration, but not be bogged down by it. You know what I mean? Because it's important to acknowledge what's going on in the world, but not to let it weigh you down to the point where you're just like, well, everything's screwed. There's nothing we can do. Or you end up falling prey to ideas like QAnon or, the UFO disclosure or something, and thinking that, well, somebody else is going to come save the day, or Derrick Broze is taking care of things, so I don't need to fight 5G in my community, or, the Houston freethinkers are out there spreading the good positive message of voluntarism and of community action, so I don't need to do anything. But that's not what I'm here for. I don't want to just be a talking head, right? That's why I am just myself, just communicating with you amazing people. And we need to be able to step up to the plate, really, as it is, and just say, I see issues and things that I don't like. I see things going on maybe in my own personal world, and I see things going on in the world around me that are not reflecting the values that I hold near and dear and the things that I want to see in the world. And if that is true for you, well, then ask yourself, what are you willing to do to get the world to a place that would reflect your values? What are you willing to do, right? Are you willing to go say, hey, I want to vote for somebody to force somebody else to live the way that I want? Or are you willing to lead by example? Are you willing to be the one that says, okay, this is what I think is necessary to change the world, and I'm going to show you guys what that looks like? That's what I strive to do, and obviously sometimes better than others, but I know that most people learn through action. They learn by leading by example, right? And let me just give you a brief example. I was listening to an interview recently, and the people talking are kind of irrelevant, but just let me give you this example. They're having a conversation, and one of the people is basically saying, like, ecological disaster means that the world's about to end, and people need to take it very seriously because those who are not are just completely ignorant, and they're very upset about this issue, right? And they said, we need to switch from meat-eating diets to being vegan because meat eating is no longer sustainable. And the person in doing the interview said, well, are you a vegan? And the person who just finished saying everybody needs to switch to being vegans and give up meat to save the planet said, no, they're not a vegan. They used to be, or at one point they tried it out, but nobody else joined them, and so they just gave up. And I mean, not only to me is that it's a huge hypocrisy to sit here and say, like, you're willing to try to force people and use, the guns of government to say, I'm going to make you live the way that I think is necessary, even if it's true. And to some degree, I do agree. I mean, that we're going to get to a point where meat won't be sustainable. But my point is, yes, you're exactly right of what interview that was. And I know him personally as well. And yeah, but the thing is, so you're not even willing to take the first step and say, I'm going to go down this lonely, dark road, and even if I'm the only one, I'm going to be an example of somebody who's living close to their principles. Instead, you're like, well, nobody joined me, so I give up until we can all make a pact, is essentially what he said. Until we can all make a pact and agree we need to do this together, then I'm not doing anything. And I mean, that's just a cop-out. That's weak. We have to be willing to stand by our principles even when we're lonely, and we have to be willing to push boldly into into new areas, especially areas where it's uncomfortable. Because living a life of comfort, especially in the first world, in the modern world, Western world, is easy. That doesn't take any effort to live comfortably. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot of effort to try to say, despite all of the comforts around me, despite the niceties and the pleasantries that living in Babylon has provided me, and despite the ease and the convenience of these various technologies, I will choose to not allow myself to get lost in them, right? Or I will choose to still be a conscious person, right? Because it's very easy to get lost in the pleasures of, let's say, alcohol or drugs or sex, and just the sexual energy, or technology. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm battling in a technology addiction that lately I've been trying to get a handle on, and it's because I came home from my tour after being just away from the internet and really not spending a lot of time to just diving in. I went from one extreme to the other, and I tend to do that. So now it's about finding that balance, right? Like, okay, hey, I can still do my research and do the things I care about, but I need to still be able to balance that time to stay sane, right? So my point here, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, is lead by example. Be willing to do the things that you say are the solutions that need to exist in the world. Like everything I say to you guys on videos, when I'm talking about, finding ways to not pay taxes, when I talk about finding ways to, buy from the farmers markets or grow your own food, or to use alternative currencies, it's because I've done those things myself, and because I've tried them and I've seen the benefit of them, and I'm communicating that. It's not because I'm saying, yeah, well, one day once we get that system set in place, I'll join you guys. But in the meantime, I'll just live under, I'll contribute to the state, I'll take money from the state and whatever. But my point is, like, we either live the world we want to see now and we try to create it, which I think is what the whole philosophy of agorism is about. That's agorism, as in agora, for those who are new here. I think that's what the whole philosophy is about, is trying to actually create the world we want to see now, not just settling and saying, well, because I mean, I've heard the pragmatic argument. Some people say, well, dude, I get what you're saying, and that's nice, and one day maybe people will evolve to the point that we can do that, but I'm living in reality, and you're living in a fantasy world. I've been told that plenty of times. You're living in a fantasy world. I'm living in reality where people, the government exists, and people are going to use the government, and, the real world is that people don't care about the environment, or they don't care about freedom, or they don't care about veganism, or whatever your issue may be. So until enough people care, I'm going to set aside my care and concern until it's convenient. That's basically what you're saying, is like, you don't want to be the one to do the difficult work to carve that path, and and maybe to get no credit at all for your efforts, your time, and your energy, but to be the one that contributes. Because that's the way I think about it. I think about the seventh generation, right? Take that principle from our indigenous communities that have understood the power of seeing long term and looking long term, right? And being able to think, it's not only about what is, what my life is like and what my children are like and what my grandchildren's lives are like, but what is it going to be like for the people coming after your grandchildren and their grandchildren, up to 7 generations and beyond. People that you will never meet, that will never know your face, your voice, your touch. Well, maybe through technology they will, right? Maybe they'll bring you back and you'll get to meet all these 7th generations in the future, right? But if you're thinking about long term like that, then you have to be able to stop and say, okay, so what can I do today that will make it a little bit easier for those who are coming after me, whether those are my direct relatives or just relatives in the human family, right? Well, in my mind, I'm thinking it's so difficult right now to try to exist outside of the state. It's so difficult for those of us who say, I'm going to opt out of the political system. I'm going to opt out of the taxation system. I'm going to opt out of the mainstream education system. I'm going to opt out of all mainstream systems. And you end up basically rejecting all of normal life and feeling isolated and feeling like you're crazy until you can find, tribes of other people who are equally black sheep and things like that. So my point is, you can either choose to live by your principles and try to create and shape the world around you to actually put them into implementation, or you can put that off for some time and place where I don't know what you're waiting for. People think that, like, oh, one day we'll be able to get a third party into the political system, and it will slowly, through reformism, or after 200 plus years, we'll be able to get a little bit of our rights back, or we'll be able to get some of the measures we passed, and that's the legacy we're leaving to the children. Fuck that. Like, I want to leave behind something tangible. I want to be able to say, you know what, when I was growing up back in my day, there were no alternative counter-economic markets out there that you guys see everywhere now. There were no decentralized exchanges. We had to build it. We had to participate in it. We were there in the early days, laying the foundation for the future generations to be able to, the underground railroads of the future, as it will be, the ways to get people in and out of dangerous totalitarian states, the ways to get information in and out of communities, and being able to come together as free, empowered people. Because, I mean, that's the world I imagine. Like, unfortunately, I don't see a very utopian future, except for in the communities that we're going to create. We're going to create these agoras, these conscious agoras. But I do feel like the outside world, the world around us, is going to get more and more totalitarian. Somebody said something about children. Having children in a world like this, if you mean a world like, this crazy world, like that it currently exists, yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm not so sure about having kids. But as far as having kids in an anarchist type world, we do need more kids. We do need more children in there, because I actually did a video this week talking about peaceful parenting and how important peaceful parenting is to this message. And I myself am not a parent yet, but I've had a number of friends say things like, the answer is to outbreed the statists. Think about that movie Idiocracy. How many of you have seen the documentary called Idiocracy? Well, if you haven't, you need to go watch it and then cry yourself to sleep. But Idiocracy, it outlines a horrible vision of the future that some say is slowly becoming a reality, especially the political theater. But in that world, the smartest people keep delaying having children because things are just crazy. And they're like, no, we need to wait till the market's right. Or no, we need to wait till, the economy or whatever. And of course, the poorest and the least educated and maybe the least conscious in some cases among us, not to say everybody who's poor is unconscious, but those the lower individuals who are uneducated and who are just like having babies, they show them in the movie, they outbreed the smart people. So then the future ends up flooded with overpopulation of unintelligent, low intelligent people who can barely string syllables together because they've been spending so much time on the internet, and their attention span has shrank and shrank and shrank, and their ability for language and capacity has shrank and shrank and shrank, right? And so my point here is that's the future we could potentially have if none of us intelligent, alternative thinking, conscious beings who believe and know that violence is wrong, if we don't have children. Personally, I don't think I want to be a father necessarily. It sounds like a whole lot of work to me. But I think that people who are consciously choosing to try to have babies so that they can bring more anarchist-minded, freedom-minded people into the world, or at least have less damaged people. Because what it really comes down to is, think about this. Much of the problems, and we're going to get into the news in a moment, much of the problems that we're dealing with in the world, though, I believe they can be traced back to, and I think the evidence is clear, that they can be traced back to our early relationships, the way that we treat other people, the way that we treat ourselves, and the ways that we communicate, our self-esteem, all these various aspects that affect who we are going to be as an adult in the world, and whether or not we're going to be somebody who is just lacking in self-esteem, lacking in self-love, lacking in self-confidence, and so engages in various types of behavior, which are, you could say antisocial behavior, or they get lost into like drugs and things like that. Speaking as a former drug addict, I definitely know that my personal problems, my issues with my lack of relationship and my birth father growing up directly contributed to my desire to want to go get blitzed out of my mind and try to ignore everything and think that I would find the answers in drugs, right? So once I started to become conscious of that, I could start to heal the deeper roots and not go out into society and just be a fuck up. Not to say that, I think freedom, right? Freedom, use whatever drugs you want, do whatever you want. But generally, I was not contributing anything to the world. And I don't know if we're required to do so, if there's a duty upon us to be, contributing something of value. Of course, value is subjective. But my point is, I was definitely not in a good, strong emotional place. And when I look at the world today, what I see is that all of the various things that we're going to talk about today, people's desire for control, people's desire to take over, whether it's because of economic reasons like greed, or just more control, or for population control, or more nefarious things, or people's desire to hurt others, say through pedophilia, through child trafficking, people who desire to be in politics, all of these different symptoms can be traced back to the individuals. What we are seeing manifest in the physical world, in the macro, is a reflection of what's taking place within the human species down to the micro level. And that's just the fact of the matter. So that's why the conscious resistance and holistic activism is all about looking at the full picture, right? Not just raging against the system, raging against the machine, but asking yourself, in which ways am I contributing to these systems? In which ways am I contributing to the problems that I see? Or is my consciousness, my wokeness, my awakeness really just another way for me to lash out and to rage? Because I've seen a lot of different activists who get stuck in that angry phase, or that fear-based phase, what sometimes we refer to as the Alex Jones phase. And they stay there, and it's because it's a grieving process. I wrote about this in book number 2, Finding Freedom in an Age of Confusion, which can be downloaded for free on theconsciousresistance.com, where we talk about the awakening process as a grieving process. And once you realize that the things you've been taught in your world were lies, that the vast majority of things that you've been shown have been lies, you have to grieve that. You have to go through that whole process of eventually accepting it. But first, maybe you're angry, you're mad at the world, like, why I was lied to. All these various people have been lying to me. And, you go through those stages, right? So some people in their healing, their grieving process, they get stuck in their anger phase. They get stuck in that fear, which is what it really comes down to, right? So I think the goal here then is to become conscious and knowledgeable of the world around us, to educate and empower ourselves, to lead by example, to not just speak, but to lead through our actions and encourage other people to take action. Because I've been doing this for 9 years now, and I can't count the number of times people have told me that I have been able to, that my slight actions, like going to city council, which takes an hour out of my day, that going to city council inspired them to go do something in their community, right? And to me, that's a win. Like if some small act I can take can inspire somebody to take action in their community, well then to me, that's the whole purpose of doing the things that I'm doing, right? Is to actually try to inspire somebody and to get a positive out of it. So those are my goals. Those are the reasons I do the things I'm doing. And I hope that maybe some of you guys can choose to take action in your own lives, and you can see what it's like to lead by example and to inspire other people. Because once you're actually living in line with your values, you start to see everything fall into place. Now, I'm not going to say everything is going to just be perfect for you, but you become more mindful, more conscious, and able to just walk through these various situations. And especially in the crazy world we're living in, you're able to take on all the crazy chaos and the fucked up news that we're dealing with. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and get into some news. Now, first off, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. If you're watching on YouTube, I will try to post these links to you that we're going to cover, but if not, I'll post them afterwards. But go to the bookmarktheconsciousresistance.com. If you have not yet, please do follow us on theconsciousresistance.com, because very soon we're going to be shutting down our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our Instagram, Amazon, and pretty much all of the Google products. I will leave up the YouTube account for a period of time because YouTube seems to be experiencing the most growth at the moment. But the best way to subscribe and to get our content is always going to be at theconsciousresistance.com right here, and to sign up for our weekly newsletter, which is what I send out every Sunday evening. All right. So the first story that we're going to cover today is, of course, the big Syria withdrawal that we're seeing take place. And, you know, there's a couple angles I really want to take on this. First is, well, I mean, if you've never seen any of my work before, I do recommend going to see my videos on Syria before, because I've covered some of the geopolitical scene. But essentially what we've seen taking place for years here is a proxy war that's been taking place between Russia, Syria, Iran, and the Western nations, NATO nations, the United States, of course, and Britain. And it's been taking place with using ISIS as a tool. Of course, many of us know and are aware that the CIA and other government agencies helped funnel funds to the ISIS, to the terrorists, to what is we known as Daesh, and essentially helped prop them up for years and use them as the boogeyman, the same way that they have talked about Osama bin Laden and any other sort of boogeyman that they want us to be afraid of, right? And Trump comes into office. Many people thought he wasn't going to be a war hawk. You know, I'm not even going to get into debate with any of the Trump supporters. Like, you can either hang out and we can agree to disagree for the moment, and you can accept reality, or, you know, just let it go. But the fact of the matter is that Trump is a war hawk. Trump is surrounded by the neocons. Now, that doesn't mean that what we're seeing here is not a good thing. Absolutely. If he's calling for a withdrawal from Syria and a drawdown in Afghanistan, I'm going to hold my breath, of course, because I do remember, it seems like I've heard this before, maybe from George W. Bush one time declaring mission accomplished. And I think even Obama at one point said that, you know, he was withdrawing the troops from Afghanistan. It's like they all like to say these kinds of things, but in reality, it's like, oh, well, we're going to have 10,000 troops and a stay behind mission, and we're going to have these other special, you know, units over here. Oh, there'll be some NATO action going on, and it ends up being there's nobody left anywhere, right? So when they come forward and say, hey, we're going to shut down the war, we're going to withdraw troops, of course I'm going to be skeptical here. I'm looking at a report here from antiwar.com. Officials say that U.S. warplanes will stop bombing Syria after troops leave. The Pentagon refused to confirm the decision officially, saying that they will keep conducting airstrikes so long as U.S. troops are on the ground. After that, they said they would not speculate. And we're going to have to wait to see if this actually plays out, right? If we actually get to see this, if this takes place, because again, there's good reason to be skeptical of this. There's good reason to doubt this, based on the people that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with, including, I'd say, John Bolton is one of the biggest war hawks, one of the biggest neocons who's been pushing for war with Iran since the Bush era. And I do think that, you know, we still have some time on Trump's presidency to see where this is going and seeing if they want to go after Iran next, which Trump has talked about. So the geopolitical implications, we're just going to have to wait and see, because we don't really know. But what I do want to point at, and I think that this most recent piece from Caitlin Johnstone, some of you may know Caitlin Johnstone. She's a blogger, a journalist. She does lots of good work. And she put out a piece just a couple days ago titled "Reactions to Trump's Syria Withdrawal Plan Say More Than the Plan Itself," which I think is kind of clear what she's saying here. That the response, now this has been, it's been kind of mind-numbing. Now, do you guys remember about a year ago, maybe it was more than a year ago, whenever Brian Williams, that was the anchor who did the report where he was just saying, oh, look at these beautiful bombs just dropping on Syria. And it's like, people are dying, right? People are dying. Bombs are being dropped on people. And of course, for those who support the war, like, well, they're terrorists. They're all terrorists. They just assume everybody who lives in these other countries are all just terrorists. There's no moms. There's no kids. There's no just people trying to survive and just live their lives because that's just where they were born by accident of birth. No, they're all terrorists, right? But so bombs are being dropped, and you've got the mainstream, reporters like Brian Williams saying, look at these beautiful bombs. Look how beautiful the situation. And it was just disgusting. I mean, it's like this guy's being paid by the military-industrial complex. And now all you have to do is just search and look up what the reports are on Syria. And literally every mainstream outlet is flipping out and saying, like, Trump's going to cause a new 9/11. Trump has lost his mind. Trump's detached from reality. And that's not like it's unusual for them to say this. And a lot of times I would say, hey, maybe they're usually correct, right? But in this case, it's so clear. The ties between the military-industrial complex and the corporate media complex are so clear that the people who benefit from this war are freaking out, right? Or at least that's the appearance. Now, generally, I'm of the crowd who think that everything we're seeing on the television screens and even on the internet screens these days is all a charade. It's all a charade. In my mind, these people all go hang out behind the scenes because there are commonalities that exist between these people. Sure, the media is attacking Trump, right? And they're saying he's a Russian agent, right? But not a single one of them, until recently, would question his ties and the United States ties to Saudi Arabia or to Israel. Those things are just kind of left off the map, right? It's okay to attack Trump about anything else, but don't attack him over Syria, right? Or his potential, over Israel, or his potential connection to Jeffrey Epstein, or to, all these different things, right? So it's just, I really see it as just a circus, as bread and circuses, exactly. And I mean, prove me wrong, right? Prove me wrong, because I think that time and time again, experience has shown that this is all a show, right? So is Trump all of a sudden a hero for the people? I know the Trump crowd is celebrating, see, we told you he was going to do good things, and he's fighting the globalists and the deep state because they're all hating on him in the media, right? This has probably been one of the most astounding things to me of this whole Trump deception, because it is a deception, is the fact that they were able to, the all-important they, were able to use Donald Trump, the Trump card, and get people who were at one point anti-war activists to now be celebrating the warmongering coming from the Trump administration. And basically they've got everything twisted and backwards. And that's the way I see the world today, is that the people in charge, whatever you want to call them, the Illuminati, the deep state, the devil, the dark energy, the demons, the archons, whatever, they have corrupted our world. That is what some would say this energy wants to do, is to corrupt, to turn everything that's good, to the opposite, to turn everything that's light to dark, right? And I think that our world has now become so mixed up, and because of things to the really practical level, on like say fake news and things like that. I see somebody commenting about fake news. Well, and I've talked about this before. I talked about this on my tour, that the term fake news was weaponized not only to attack independent media like myself, to say, oh no, they're fake news, they're not real news, so they shouldn't have ad funding, they shouldn't have Facebook pages, they should be removed from the internet. But also, it allows more and more division, so that the people on, say, the right can, anytime you say anything about Trump, they say, oh, that's just fake news, you must be a libtard, that's liberal media lies, Hollywood lies, right? And then you go to somebody on the left and say, have you heard about this about Ocasio-Cortez or, Biden or Bernie Sanders? And they say, oh, that's just Russian propaganda, that's just fake news, right? So each side gets to say, that's fake news, I don't believe you, I'm not going to listen to you, and put their fingers in their ears and become further entrenched into their viewpoint and create more division. I wrote an article about this in December 2016, calling this out, that fake news was going to be used to divide the truth community, to divide the anarchist community, and divide those who are slowly waking up. Those who'd woken up during the Obama era, all of a sudden, they fell for the Trump card, right? And the people who've been waking up during the Bush era, they fell for the Obama hope and change card. And I guarantee you guys, it's going to be Beto O'Rourke or Joe Biden or somebody else to come in from the other side to save the day. And this is what they do, back and forth and back and forth. So excuse me, forgive me, if I have a little bit of hesitation in believing Donald Trump when they say that they're going to withdraw. Now, of course, do I like to see the media in a tizzy and freaking out like, oh my God, he's going to draw down the war. And we have to even pause there for a moment and think about that. Think about the fact that we live in a time and a place where it is considered dangerous to say maybe we shouldn't be at war anymore. And obviously the United States military is in hundreds of other countries, bases around the world, and dropping bombs in other places. But my point here is it's a positive in some regard, right? But knowing what we know about how controlled the media is and how controlled that system is, it's hard to sit here and take it at face value. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm really surprised at the amount of people who fell for this thing, who after years, these various activists who you understand things like the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Council on National Policy and all these different intersecting non-governmental organizations and think tanks and secret societies and whatnot, and how they control the media and military industrial complex and the medical industry and all these big things, right? And then all of a sudden, they think this dude who's been friends with Democrats his whole life swoops in out of nowhere and is an anti-establishment candidate. And then when the media is attacking him, the same media that they know is controlled by these various groups, they believe it. They're like, look, the media is hating this guy. That must mean he's good for me. I mean, the level of logic here is just almost non-existent, if it exists at all, right? And I mean that, and I don't mean that in any disrespect. I'm just saying you got to get out of that trap. It's a mental trap. The great John Trudell talked about the most important real estate is right here. This space between your skull. This is what they're fighting for. They want to mine your minds for everything that you have in there, for your very spirit, your very energy, and your essence, right? That's what it's about. And if you allow this to just be an empty, open vessel that anybody can pour their message into, then you allow yourself to basically, you give your brain over to somebody else and allow them to be in control. So have a little bit, more control here in the brain. I saw somebody said they got the shirt today that I sent out. That's awesome. I'm glad things are coming on time. I'm sorry it takes so long. I'm kind of slow with that. I apologize. Let's move on to the next story, guys. This one is something that I haven't seen anybody else report on. I plan to kind of do my own little article write-up of it because the article is a bit long. And it's coming from revealnews.org. Sorry, guys, I can't find the... I'm trying to post on YouTube real quick to you guys, but I can't get it to work. But this article is coming from revealnews.org, which is from the Center for Investigative Reporting. And just kind of a side note here, I've lately been thinking about trying to take up some work and do some work with nonprofit advocacy agencies, specifically for journalism, because as you guys know, the independent media is struggling and has been struggling for some time. And so I'm without any sort of paid gigs. I'm just writing for free when I can for my own website, but I miss writing and doing it and being able to get paid to do it. But more than that, I just want to keep writing. And nonprofits and advocacy groups like this one, like the Center for Investigative Reporting, who partnered with the Food and Environment Reporting Network, they typically have funding and grants where they can actually help fund investigative journalism. Now, does that mean they're going to let me dive deep down the pedophile rabbit hole? Probably not, but that doesn't mean I can't cover any important topics, and I think that's valuable, and I want to keep learning to be a better journalist, so I might get into some of that. If anybody has any tips, leads, resources, let me know. So this one is called Scientists Warned This Weed Killer Would Destroy Crops, and guess what? The EPA approved it anyway. Because you can always trust the government to be in charge of your health. You should never grow your own food. You should never actually take charge of your life and start planting some seeds in your front yard, in your backyard, in your neighbor's yards, and various other yards around the community. You should just plant, just rely on Monsanto, just rely on the grocery store. Those things are always going to be there. There's no reason to prepare for the future, to actually, learn skills. Of course, I'm being sarcastic, in case you guys missed out on my sarcasm. Some people, I realize, can't catch my sarcasm because there was a lot of angry people on my video on YouTube titled, sorry, I was wrong about 5G. There was a lot of people accusing me of being a sellout. Also, just a quick note, somebody's asking about super chats on YouTube. I don't do YouTube super chats because, as I've discussed before, I don't want any Google money. That's just kind of where I'm at. But I did recently join a website called bitbacker.io. Let me see if I can show this to you guys real quick. Please donate and click the like button. Yeah, donate and click with the like button. Likes are always shared. But I just want to say this real quick before I get into that Monsanto story. I know I'm kind of pausing on that story, but this is important. This is important for those who want to support me and want to do it in a way that, again, is consistent with our values, right? Because how do we show other people we got to lead by example and not just support. You know, I could be putting YouTube ads on all my videos if I wanted to. And like, for example, that recent city council video, that video is at like 380,000 views. And if I would have monetized that, I probably could have made a good amount of money. But I don't want YouTube money. I don't want Google money. I don't want that. I just don't want to support them, and because they don't represent anything that I want to be a part of. They, you know, and that's why I'm moving away from using all their products. But I did find bitbacker.io, bitbacker.io/user/dbroze, and you can find me. And what Bitbacker is, it's just like Patreon. So I have a Patreon account.com/DerrickBroze, but you can actually give me crypto instead of paying me with YouTube money. And bitbacker.io actually allows you to do a super chat thing as well. So I can do some, you know, you can make donations to me via that platform. I'm gonna have to probably set that up for the next live stream, because right now I have just really barely set up the video. But actually, wait, let's see if I can do it right now. Let me see if it works. Let me see if it works, guys. I'm gonna try to get this link to you guys. And again, I'm sorry to interrupt the broadcast to do this. I just wanted to mention this to you guys because I am trying to find some way to continue to do my platform and to do my work, and to do it in a way that is consistent with my values and that doesn't involve having to take money from idiots and people I don't like. All right, I got the link. So I think if you follow this link, I'm posting this on Facebook, I'm posting this on YouTube. Sorry if you're just joining, you're wondering what this is all about. The chat, there's a super chat feature that I don't typically use because it involves taking money from Google. But I'm now using bitbacker.io, and that will allow me to take money from you guys if you want to support me, but not have to do it in a Google way. So I'm going to go ahead and post those links, guys, and let's get into this story. I apologize for the delay here. Whew. So dicamba. Has anybody ever heard of dicamba? Dicamba, D-I-C-A-M-B-A, dicamba. It is apparently a very dangerous pesticide, insecticide, that has been in use for some time now. It's nothing completely brand new, but there's the power chat link. But it does cause health problems apparently, and this has been known. These dangers have been known by the EPA for some time now. But you'd never know that because dicamba, like say other products that are connected to the company formerly known as Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, like Roundup, like glyphosate, dicamba has been linked to all kinds of health problems. And this really, really great article here on reveal.news, it gets into the topic and it shows you just a deeper story of how deep Monsanto's fingers go. I mean, just when you thought you heard enough about Monsanto and you really didn't think that Monsanto could be any deeper to, you know, connected to government institutions, you find out something like this. And yeah, dicamba is definitely widely used. This is a joint investigation by the Center for Investigative Reporting and the Food Environmental Reporting Network has found that the U.S. EPA, which is required by law to ensure pesticides don't impose unreasonable environmental and economic costs, could have averted the destruction. So it says that 2 weeks ago, even though dicamba is causing widespread damage to crops and wild plants, the EPA approved the weed killer for another 2 years, stating that the new label instructions will minimize the harm. The EPA ignored scientists' warnings and extensive research that showed that dicamba would evaporate into the air and ruin crops miles away, according to documents which were obtained through public records requests and lawsuits. Instead, the EPA's approval was based on studies by the companies that manufacture dicamba. Imagine this. Conflicts of interest. You know, when we talk about things like 5G, imagine this, conflicts of interest between the companies producing a product and you know, the people who are supposed to regulate it. Imagine finding that. One scientist called the studies shockingly insufficient. And of course, Monsanto's name pops up. Monsanto Co. orchestrated the massive deployment of dicamba on tens of millions of acres of crops in the Midwest and Mid-South, when it lobbied the EPA to allow the chemical to be used on its own genetically modified seeds for cotton and soybeans. So just like the Monsanto has Roundup Ready corn and Roundup Ready soy, which are already genetically engineered to withstand their crazy Roundup pesticide, which has also been linked to cancers and tumors and all kinds of different things. Just like that, Monsanto also engineered some cotton and some soybeans which work with this dicamba and can be sprayed, you know, indiscriminately with it. The seeds were worth $3 billion last year. And it says that issues with dicamba began to emerge under the Obama administration, but Obama approved and expanded its uses on a trial basis in late 2016. And even through the Donald Trump administration, he has agreed twice to approve its use until at the end of 2020. So both the Obama administration and the Trump administration involved with approving this dicamba chemical here. And it says, for decades, U.S. farmers applied this weed killer mostly on corn and other grass crops, which tolerate it. They took care not to spray it around soybeans, tomatoes, and other broadleaf plants, which flinch at the slightest drop. Soybean and cotton growers never used dicamba during the growing season because it would damage their crops. This changed when Monsanto launched an aggressive campaign in 2015 to sell soybean and cottonseed genetically modified to resist dicamba. As a result, the use of this weed killer has skyrocketed now. And now 5 years later, they have sprayed more than 1 million pounds, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And over the past 2 years, under Trump's watch, U.S. farmers have planted more than 50 million acres of dicamba-resistant soybeans and cotton. So, of course, Monsanto continuing to profit off all of this. And again, I really urge you to read the article yourself. I'll post it one more time on Facebook and on YouTube, because it goes a lot more in depth than I'm doing right now. And I think it's important for us to really understand these details, right? Because it's not just about knowing, oh yeah, down with Monsanto, down with these companies, but being able to actually, we talked about this before, being able to actually communicate with people in an effective manner, right? And being able to say, look, I'm not just some hippie who hates Monsanto and wants to go grow all my own food and live on the land. I'm that, plus I have knowledge, and I can actually defend my argument, and I can actually back up the things that I care about with facts and not with simply emotion. I can say, look, okay, perhaps you don't have concerns about genetically modified food. Perhaps you still believe the propaganda that genetically engineered foods are going to save starving kids in Africa and save the world, right? Well, then you can say, have you heard about this, my friend? Did you know that a review of over 400 studies on genetically engineered foods in the United States and in China found nearly 50% of them were contaminated by conflicts of interest with the biotechnology industry? Did you know that, my friend? And if they say, no, I didn't know that, well, then you send them a link, or you send them the article, and you show them this, and you start to put doubt in their mind. That's what I try to do, is to poke holes in things and to poke holes in authority and to get people to question these things. Not because I want them to be freaked out and just like, oh my God, everything's going to shit, but because we want them to be seeking solutions. And in my mind, the way you start seeking solutions is once you realize that the things around you that you had put your faith and hope into, again, talking about kind of waking up and then having to go through that grieving process, once you realize that the things that you put your faith into are not what you were told, it becomes easier to let go of them, right? And to just say, okay, I was deceived, but now I'm here and I'm aware, and I'm going to do what I can to help other people and to wake up other people, right? That's kind of the way I see it. So dicamba, Monsanto's fingers all over it, the EPA ignoring risks, and people getting sick and all kinds of things, right? So, all right, man. Now let's move on to this is going to be the second to last. We have two stories to cover. The other one's just going to kind of be a brief moment. But we're going to talk about 5G again. I know some of you guys have been waiting for the 5G information, so here we go. And I've got, let me see if I can pull this up real quick. I've got a cool little meme here that was made that's going to help me spread my propaganda around Houston. I don't know if I can show it to you guys on YouTube, but I'll be posting it on the Facebook video. Basically, it's a meme of the mayor of Houston, and it says, June 2018, Houston's Mayor Sylvester Turner announces 5G partnership with Verizon. September 2018, Mayor Turner receives 5G Wireless Champion Award from Big Telecom. October 2018, Mayor Turner refuses to answer questions about 5G health concerns. Still think government represents you? And because now, most of you are aware that here in Houston, I've been fighting this. One of the battles I've been fighting lately is the 5G issue. And I've made 4 trips now to Houston City Council. I've been invited on the local Fox channel to talk about this. I've confronted the head of Verizon. I've confronted my mayor. And I've done a couple of different videos talking about the surveillance concerns, about the health concerns. I mean, I feel like I've tried to cover it from a very broad perspective. But tonight, what I want to talk about, and I'm going to do an additional video on this outside of the live show, just so you guys can just get this key information here. But I think we really need to look at the 5G situation. And if we're really going to truly understand it, we need to be able to understand that what we're witnessing is a federal takeover of the power grid. And thank you to everybody who's seen me at City Hall, City Council. It's very frustrating. As I said, if you've only seen the first video, the one with me in the shorts that some people complain about me wearing shorts, that was October 1st. That was 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago now. And that's been seen 380,000 times. And I'm so thankful for that. I wish more people would follow up, because a lot of people will get really excited. Like, yes, the council actually listened. But if you watch the subsequent videos, it's clear they don't give a damn. And well, a couple of them give a damn. But unfortunately, in Houston, we have a mayor who is just tied to the telecom industry. I'm going to do a quick little rundown for you guys real quick. Well, let's do this. Let's look up. I'm going to search on quant.com. Again, if you've never used Quant, that's Q-W-A-N-T. You can also use DuckDuckGo. This is an alternative search engine for those of you who are watching and you don't want to use Google because Google sucks. You don't want to support them anymore. You can use Quant or you can use DuckDuckGo, right? So I'm just going to search on Quant, Sylvester Turner, Houston, 5G, Verizon, right? Let's see what pops up. And we see Verizon will launch 5G in Houston in 2018. Verizon Wireless announces 5G service for City of Houston. Verizon names Houston as third city for 5G rollout. And then you can get to where the mayor gets his award. The mayor promises Verizon's biggest 5G rollout yet. The mayor awarded, Houston mayor awarded what they call the 5G Wireless Award, right? So what that means is 5G Wireless Champion Award, excuse me. And it was awarded to him by an institution known as the CTIA. And this is what I'm looking at now, is the CTIA. They've changed their name a few different times. It used to be called the Cellular and Telephone Information Alliance or something along those lines. And then the internet came along and it was the Cellular and Telephone and Internet Association. And now it's like the Cellular and Telephone and, I mean, they've changed several times. But the point is the CTIA is basically a big lobby for the telecom company, big telecom, big wireless. This is Comcast, this is Verizon, this is all those various companies, right? That's who they represent. And so they gave the mayor this award, 5G Wireless Champion Award, and they had a little Q&A with the mayor and how he's saying how he's removing all restrictions and making it super easy so Houston can have self-driving cars and drone deliveries and all these great things. And you know, he doesn't mention the security concerns, the privacy concerns, the health concerns. And so, look, as I've said before, if you're concerned about 5G from a health perspective, don't start out by saying it's depopulation. It's, you know, they're trying to fry our brains. I mean, you're free to do what you want, but that's my advice. Take it for whatever it's worth. You're not going to get very far with people, right, on that stance. And also, I never tried to get to be the health guy when it comes to 5G. I mean, one of my arguments is health. One of my arguments is privacy, which surveillance, I'm kind of more concerned about surveillance. Yes, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get cancer, but if we're surveyed everywhere we go, there will be no freedom. So you might be irradiated and maybe you're going to get cancers or get headaches or just have health problems, you know, if those things are found to be conclusively true. But you also will be completely controlled and you won't have anywhere free to go, right? So I wasn't necessarily trying to be the health guy, especially because I'm not a scientist, as so many YouTube commenters have made it clear to me in case I wasn't aware. I'm not a scientist. So I was taking more the privacy concerns. But beyond that, look, if you're not a scientist, if you're not a doctor, they won't take you seriously. End of story. They won't take you seriously. And even the doctors and scientists that take our side, the skeptics, they're just going to say they're quacks. So stop trying to convince them about the health, right? Share it with people who want to hear it, but you don't need to convince other people because they don't care. They don't want to know. And most people, they just want their wireless. They just want fast internet and faster streaming and all that stuff. They don't care about their health. But if you can get people to see that this is a corruption thing, this is a takeover. Like I wrote an article about this on the Conscious Resistance a couple months back. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Talking about how the FCC had passed a rule that basically overrid all local authority so that, say, Houston or wherever you're listening from, you cannot pass a law and says, hey, Houston is going to set these safety measures in place for the 5G rollout, or we're going to charge this amount, or, you know, just whatever sort of specific deal that the city of Houston wanted, right? That's no longer allowed because the FCC is now in charge of the rollout. So think about that. That's a federal institution, and the chairman of the FCC is directly appointed by the president, and they're in charge of technology, and now they're in charge of the 5G rollout, of the rollout of the Internet of Things, the rollout of all of that smart grid, and of everything that's going to be coming in the coming days, which will include loss of privacy. It may include health concerns. It may include all kinds of really, you know, troublesome issues. And this article I wrote October 1st, new FCC ruling gives federal government control of 5G rollout. So the more I've looked into the situation of what I'm doing in Houston, the more it becomes clear to me that the reason the mayor isn't going to listen to anything I'm saying is, well, for one, the plan's already put in place. Like, you know, I'm doing what I can to try to inspire you guys once again and to actually try to, you know, get some attention out here in Houston. But I ultimately don't have any faith that I'm going to be able to stop them because, for one, Houston has a very strong mayoral position, which means that if the mayor doesn't want to talk about something, it won't get placed on the city's agenda. It won't get placed on, you know, on the discussion. They'll just ignore you, right? So the other council members have told me that they can't do anything about it, even if they wanted to. So I'm not really expecting the fruits of my labor to be that 5G stops in Houston, but I'm trying to expose this because what we're witnessing here is a takeover. And for those of you who can see the links, I'll post this to you. This is coming from Tech News. It's saying 5G, a revolution that's not without risks. And it's talking about how more and more people are concerned about using, I don't know how to describe it or how to pronounce it, Huawei, I think. It's the Chinese company that's developing the 5G infrastructure for China that the United States and now Europe and other nations have started to say, we don't want that. We don't want that, their technology, because they're afraid that the government of China is going to use 5G networks to infiltrate, you know, infrastructure in the United States and to have a cyber hack or, you know, all kinds of things. Huawei, thank you, for things like that, right? So there's a big push right now. What we're witnessing is a global arms race. And even the CTIA, back to the CTIA, the telecom big wireless lobby, they are the ones who originated this whole race to 5G, and where all the cities are, you know, in a huge race. Who can be the first to get 5G? That's why the mayor doesn't care, right? But it's not just within the nation. It's also out between China and the United States. Which country can be the first one to put their 5G infrastructure and to sell it the most? Because whichever one gets put in place, that is going to be the nation, some believe, that will guide technology and guide the coming decades. Because just like people wanted to get nuclear weapons for nuclear energy and for defense and things like that, if you can put in this 5G infrastructure, maybe you'll be the first one to autonomous cars, autonomous vehicles, and to smart devices and the augmented reality. You know, they're saying that within 10 years, smartphones are going to be gone because most people are just going to embrace augmented reality and virtual reality, and we're just going to be living in that world. So it's coming fast. And again, I think that maybe taking the health arguments or even sometimes the privacy arguments aren't the best way to go, because we're witnessing a takeover. This is a financial takeover. I mentioned I was researching some of these nonprofit organizations that do really good journalism. And I found from the Center for Public Integrity tons of reports talking about local residents actually trying to fight back against the FCC and trying to resist them, but they've been just ran over by these companies and by their partners in federal governments, right? So, I mean, we're literally witnessing these corporations, the corporatization and the monopolization of the infrastructure that's going to guide the coming decades, you know, in the coming, probably the coming, you know, century, really, and beyond that, right? Because 5G, I don't think some people realize this isn't just a simple change from 3G to 4G. This is going to revolutionize our world for better and for worse, probably. So there is resistance. This article from the Center for Public Integrity, residents worried about small cell safety have been waiting years for federal guidance. And it goes really in depth into looking at this. People are getting towers and boxes put up 30 feet outside of their windows, and they have no say of it because the federal government gave that power over to the fucking corporations. And that's yeah, crony capitalism, as some put it, or just corporatism. That's them working together, right? And on top of that, just today, December 21st, the solstice, happy winter solstice to everybody out there, AT&T unveils their new 5G hotspot and monthly plans at, as Extreme Tech calls it, eye-watering prices. Yeah, they're making this fairly cheap. Of course, AT&T is selling some $500 Netgear Nighthawk 5G mobile hotspot. And, you know, on top of that, paying $500, you got to pay like $70 more, $10. I mean, it's just whatever. You can figure it out. But they're launching it today in Atlanta, Charlotte, Dallas, Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Louisville, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, Raleigh, North Carolina, San Antonio, and Waco, Texas. So all over Texas, they're expanding this, and it's going to expand into the following cities in the first half of 2019: Las Vegas, LA, Nashville, Orlando, San Diego, San Francisco, and San Jose. So this is happening right now. Like the 5G rollout is today. It's like taking place in the moments right now. And the more and more I look into this, the steps, the groundwork were being laid. And since 2012, really, once 4G first came on, this plan is being put into place. And yes, small cells have already been out there, and they've been put in place for other reasons. But now more small cells are being put. More millimeter waves are going to be out there, like the ones that you have to go through the radiation machines at the airport. And yes, I am that guy who opts out of the whenever I have time, which is generally every single time, I opt out of the body scanners. And I've been opting out of the body scanners for years because I don't want that. And even though they say, oh, you get more radiation elsewhere, but this is going directly on your skin. And if I have an option, why not avoid it? I just saw a comment, a question, am I anomaly? No, I am not anomaly, but I would love to debate him and have a discussion about why he continues to lead people astray by supporting Donald Trump and pretending to be woke and awake, but justifying everything wrong with Donald Trump. So if you've got any kind of contact, or if you want to reach out, tell him, let's have a nice friendly discussion. I have been told that before though. But so the 5G rollout is taking place right now. And as I said, it's not just a health concern. It's not just a privacy concern. This is a corporate takeover. This is a corporate takeover and control of the future grid that is going to outline everything that we see in the coming world. So if these corporations are able to secure, as they seemingly already have, to secure themselves tightly in control of this, you've got the companies that are building the infrastructure, and then you got the people that are, and they're leasing it out to companies like AT&T, to Verizon, to all these other companies. And there's also about to be a merge between Sprint, I think, and one other company. But I mean, these companies are just getting bigger and bigger, right? Everybody's been worried about the big agriculture companies and the Monsantos for years. We forgot all about the power of these big telecoms. We've been so worried about the Googles and the Facebooks and the social media, we totally forgot about how big and how much of a monopoly Comcast and these companies have. It's really astounding to realize that. And that's how we end up in a world where 90% of everything we see, hear, read is filtered down through 5 corporations. So yeah, man, it's real out there. Shit's real. One last thing I want to mention that somebody just brought to my attention just right before we started the show. Who knows Sacha Baron Cohen? You guys know this guy? Bruno, Borat. Some of you may be familiar with this guy. He's, of course, a comedian who does all kinds of crazy stuff, and he has an HBO show that he's done recently and his kind of shtick is he'll do these. He's even almost got Ron Paul one time. He'll pretend to be somebody undercover and then interview somebody famous, under false pretenses, and then make them laugh, or or not make them laugh, but make us laugh by kind of trolling them, right? So this article right here, though, and I'll post this for you guys on YouTube and on Facebook, because you're going to want to read this one on your own, because it might connect to some of the stuff I've been investigating with Jeffrey Epstein and with the Finders, which, FYI, the Finders should be out any time now, any day now. I should be getting the rough draft. And approve that as soon as that's ready to go. And hopefully this week you guys will have the Finders documentary. So Sacha Baron Cohen in this article, it says, Sacha Baron Cohen's Who is America, which is his new TV show, deleted scene may have exposed elite pedophile sex ring. And you're like, what? What the heck is this? It says, in Sacha Baron Cohen's latest series, Who is America, the character, comedian, and provocateur nudged former and current members of Congress into endorsing armed kindergartners, revealing anti-Muslim racism, and got Dick Cheney to autograph a waterboarding kit. But there was one scene the Showtime series captured on camera that was too dark and extreme, even for Baron Cohen. And it says that in a new interview with Deadline, Baron Cohen describes how the election of Donald Trump inspired him to get back into costume. And blah, 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 skip this. He says, but more than Cheney, Baron Cohen's most shocking encounter came when, in character as an Italian playboy Gio Monaldo, he convinced a concierge to help him find an underage boy to molest. We wanted to investigate, how does someone like Harvey Weinstein get away with criminality, essentially, and the network that surrounds him. We decided that Gio would interview a concierge in Las Vegas. During the interview, believing the admission would drive the concierge from the room, Baron Cohen, as Gio, reveals that he molested an 8-year-old boy. The guy starts advising Gio how to get rid of the issue, even at one point talking about murdering the boy, and the concierge is just saying, well, listen, I'm really sorry. In this country, we can't just drown the boy. This is America. We don't do that. After the concierge offers to put Gio in touch with a lawyer who can help, quote, silence the boy, Baron Cohen asks for help securing a date for the night. He says, what do you mean? I go, you know, like a young man. He says, well, what kind of age? I say, lower than bar mitzvah, but older than 8. And he says, yeah, I can put you in touch with somebody who can get you some boys like that. Rather than airing the segment, Baron Cohen and his production team turned the footage over to the FBI because we thought perhaps there's a pedophile ring in Vegas that's operating for these very wealthy men. And obviously in Vegas, things like that are going on. And this concierge had said that he'd worked for politicians and various billionaires. He worked for politicians and various billionaires. While Baron Cohen judged the interview too dark and extreme to be included on the show, it is a revealing look at how the powerful can get away with decades-long sexual abuse, including pedophile sexual abuse, and they even mention, such as in the massive cover-up of crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, orchestrated by President Trump's Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta. According to Baron Cohen, the FBI decided against pursuing the tip. So the FBI said, nothing to see here. We're not worried about it. We're not going to look into it. But that's just kind of one of those stories thrown out there that was reported yesterday by Newsweek in the morning, 11:57 a.m. I don't know how many people are going to pay attention to it or if it means anything, if it goes anywhere else. But it's definitely another interesting tidbit about this whole crazy thing. And I do want to remind you guys, if you haven't watched any of our videos on theconsciousresistance.com related to the Finders investigation, I would recommend that please do go check out theconsciousresistance.com and look at our Finders investigation. We have parts 1 through 6, and I probably will be doing a bonus episode on Monday. And you can, keep up to date with that, because if you don't know, the Finders cult is a whole other subject that I've been getting into that relates to pedophilia, trafficking, accusations of satanic activity, and it's just this whole mess that became national news and then disappeared overnight or within 6 days in 1987. And it's still relevant. It's still important. The people who are involved are still alive. There's still a lot to talk about regarding that. And I'm very excited to release these details to you guys because it's stuff that's never been seen anywhere else. And hopefully it can lead to something powerful. And I will say this, just kind of as a teaser, for anyone who might be potentially planning on going to Acapulco, Mexico in February for Anarchapulco, I will be speaking for the 3rd year in a row, 2019. And of course, if you go to theconsciousresistance.com, there's a link there. You can get 10% off your tickets. But what I will say this is we're going to release part 1 of the Finders this coming week. We're going to release part 2 of the Finders in January. And then in February at Anarchapulco, we're actually going to do a film premiere where we're going to screen the whole documentary together as one single cut with additional things that I'll probably leave out of the 2 parts that you guys see beforehand. So the final edition, the final cut, will be screened in a premiere if everything goes well. I haven't been 100% confirmed just yet, but if everything goes well, I will be able to screen this at Anarchapulco. I don't think Anarchapulco is sold out just yet. The hotel may have sold out, but I don't think they are sold out of tickets. And Mark Passio will be speaking again. I will be speaking. Lots of good people there. There's going to be health and wellness stuff, anarchist stuff, philosophy, peaceful parenting. There's going to be lots of fun on the beach. There's going to be workshops, and I'm going to be giving a really brand new presentation in addition to the film screening and all kinds of fun stuff. So if you can make it down to Mexico, then definitely come check that out. And I will also be speaking at Envision Festival in Costa Rica following that. But anyways, I'm done for tonight, and we're almost done for the year, guys. For those of you who are on Facebook, we've got 1 more week together, and then I'm done with Facebook, and you're just going to have to look at the, the Conscious Resistance Facebook page and just wish that you were still seeing my content. You're going to have to go to theconsciousresistance.com, or you're going to have to join BitShoot, or you're going to have to join MeWe, or you're going to have to join Minds, or you're going to have to join the Freedom Cell Network, or Steam It, or any of the other platforms out there. And for those of you who are interested in alternative social media platforms, I did put out a brand new video just a couple of days ago on Facebook and YouTube and all the platforms called Find Me on These Alternative Social Media Platforms, where you can learn more about them. Mark Passio is going to be at Anarchapulco again. If there are any other questions, I will take them now. And if not, I wish you guys a Merry Christmas for those who do Christmas. Continued Hanukkah, if Hanukkah's still going on. A happy Kwanzaa. Feliz Navidad. Merry Solstice. I'm going to go to a solstice celebration tonight. Have a good old night, relaxing with some friends and some family. But yeah, other than that, guys, thank you guys so much for the continued support. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without you, and I hope that we can continue to work on making this a better world sometime soon. Don't celebrate any pagan tradition. Well, that's a whole nother topic. All right, guys, have a good night. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.